Welcome to Vox Orthodoxa. Today, we are entering a really profound space. We're starting a deep dive into a text that, at first glance, might seem a bit distant from the rhythm of your daily life.
Right. It can definitely seem that way initially.
But, it actually holds the very medicine your soul might be crying out for right now. We are exploring Volume 9 of the Philokalia.
Yes. Specifically looking at the monumental translation and the deeply pastoral commentary by the Romanian theologian, Father Dumitru Stăniloae.
Exactly. And within these pages, we find the Ladder of Divine Ascent by St. John Climacus, alongside the spiritual teachings of Abba Dorotheus.
To truly approach this material, we first need to understand what we're opening. The word Philokalia literally means love of the beautiful.
That's a beautiful translation in itself.
It really is. And it's not merely an old book. It's a generational compilation, an anthology of writings by spiritual masters that spans centuries.
Right, written by men and women who retreated into the deep silence of the desert during the 6th and 7th centuries.
Yes, to map the inner workings of the human heart. So we are not treating these texts as dusty historical artifacts. We are opening a living, breathing first aid manual for the soul.
And our mission in this deep dive is to gently extract that ancient wisdom and apply it directly to the heavy burdens of modern life.
Because the burdens are heavy.
They are. If you are listening to this while navigating a crowded, hyper-connected city, carrying the weight of financial anxiety, or just a quiet, persistent spiritual isolation, this text is speaking directly to you.
To begin this process of healing, we have to allow the text to examine our condition. Father Stăniloae provides a deeply moving diagnosis of human suffering based on these desert writings.
What does that diagnosis look like?
He observes that humanity's deepest, most agonizing pain occurs when we lose our conscious, living connection with the infinite God of love.
Because the human soul was uniquely created with an infinite capacity, right?
Exactly. It possesses an endless thirst because it was designed to be filled by an endless creator.
That actually brings to mind a very stark image. Imagine wandering through a vast, scorching desert, dying of an intense thirst. And in the distance, you find a pool of water. You drink frantically, only to realize it's salt water.
Which is devastating because the salty water doesn't hydrate you at all. It actively dehydrates you.
Right. The more you consume to quench your desperate thirst, the faster your body shuts down. And the ancient ascetics believed this is exactly how we're living our modern lives.
Drinking the salt water of finite things to cure an infinite ache in our souls.
Yes. We feel that infinite spiritual need, that hollow ache, but we mistakenly try to cure it by frantically consuming material objects, money, career status, the fleeting validation of our peers.
And the mechanism of our sickness is found right there in that mismatch. When you attempt to fill an infinite void with finite things, those things are instantly exhausted.
You just constantly need more.
You do. Stăniloae describes the result of this endless, frantic consumption as a petrification, an anesthesia of the heart.
Anesthesia of the heart. That's a really heavy phrase.
It is. When a human being becomes entirely focused on accumulating material wealth or protecting their earthly status, the heart literally turns to stone.
It just hardens.
Yes, the soul enters a cynical, hardened state of self-preservation. We reach a tragic point where we can no longer feel true, unselfish joy for the successes of our neighbors.
Or authentic compassion for their pains.
Right. We become entirely trapped within the suffocating boundaries of our own desires.
It's a sobering reality to confront. The text describes the passions, our unchecked desires, our fears, as heavy physical chains that drag the spirit downward.
They do. They anchor us to anxiety.
But this raises a very practical question for me. We're reading texts written for monks who deliberately walked away from society to live in the harsh, silent desert of Mount Sinai. Today, a person living in a bustling city is hyper-connected to thousands of people through technology, yet often feels this exact same spiritual exhaustion and isolation.
It's a profound paradox.
So how does the wisdom of the literal desert apply to the concrete jungle?
Well, it's the most natural assumption to make, that if our anxiety stems from the noise of the city, we have to flee our daily lives, abandon our responsibilities, and find a physical desert to be cured.
Right, just pack up and escape.
But St. John Climacus anticipates this. He offers a deeply comforting, liberating instruction addressed directly to lay people.
People living right in the middle of society, holding jobs, raising families.
Exactly. He writes, "Do all the good you can. Do not slander anyone. Do not steal from anyone. Do not lie to anyone. Do not be arrogant toward anyone. Have compassion on the needy." And then he says, "If you do this, You will not be far from the kingdom of heaven.
There is such a profound gentleness in that instruction. He's insisting that the soul is not healed by physically escaping society.
Not at all.
The healing occurs by adopting a completely different interior posture within society. We don't need to leave the city. We just need to fundamentally change how we stand within it.
And the Philokalia is remarkably practical in this regard. It doesn't just offer abstract theological concepts.
It gives very physical, concrete remedies to break that stone heart, right?
Yes. Two of the most prominent prescriptions are singing together, specifically participating in church singing, and the consistent giving of alms or charity.
I actually want to pause on that concept of almsgiving for a second.
Yeah.
I want to offer some gentle pushback on behalf of the modern listener.
Of course.
In today's economy, a regular person is often intensely stressed about paying rent, buying groceries, simply surviving inflation in a demanding city.
It's a very real, very heavyweight.
It is. So doesn't the advice to literally give your money away risk creating more panic and instability in a person's life rather than ushering in peace?
That economic fear is incredibly powerful. And it's precisely the fear that the passions use to keep us chained to our anxiety.
Okay, how so?
Well, Abba Dorotheus and St. John Climacus understand the deep mechanics of human trust. The act of giving alms is not prescribed merely as an economic transaction to help the poor.
It's doing something to the giver.
Exactly. It's a spiritual surgery for the giver. That anxiety over bills and survival is heavily rooted in the illusion that we are entirely in control of and entirely dependent upon our material wealth.
Oh, I see.
So when we give a portion of it away, especially when we feel we lack, we strike a direct blow against that possessive attachment that petrifies our hearts.
It's like the physical act of opening a tightly clenched fist.
That's a perfect way to describe it.
As long as the fist is clenched around our possessions, terrified of losing them, the hand cannot receive peace.
Right.
By giving, we're actively proving to our own souls that our survival doesn't strictly depend on the material object. It forces the soul to trust in God's providence.
Effectively breaking the illusion of complete self-reliance. That is the exact mechanism. We regain our spiritual mobility.
Because the rigid, terrified grip on the finite world has been intentionally, manually loosened.
Yes. The heart begins to soften.
So if releasing our grip on material wealth begins this healing, it naturally leads us to ask what other heavier things we might be clutching.
And as we read further into the commentary, it becomes clear that financial anxiety is really only a surface-level symptom.
What's the deeper sickness?
The most exhausting burden we carry every single day is the attachment to our own image. The text identifies this as vainglory and pride.
Ah, yes.
Consider the immense, truly incalculable amount of energy we waste every day trying to maintain an invulnerable, perfect facade.
We carefully curate our lives on social media. We hide our struggles and doubts at work.
We perform constantly so that others will think highly of us. We are terrified of being seen as weak or flawed or just ordinary.
And the Philokalia recognizes this suffocating need for control and external validation as a profound sickness. It builds an impenetrable, lonely wall between us and our fellow human beings.
To visualize this state of vainglory, imagine a person standing alone on a stage holding up a massive, incredibly heavy theatrical backdrop all by themselves.
Oh, wow.
They are trembling under the weight of it, their muscles are aching, they're completely exhausted.
But they are absolutely terrified that if they let go, the backdrop will crash to the floor and the audience will see the plain, unadorned truth behind it.
It's an agonizing way to live. And the ultimate cure for this performance anxiety is humility.
Which, in the Romanian translation by Father Stăniloae, is captured in the nuanced word smerenia.
Yes, smerenia. And it's crucial to understand that smerenia is not weakness. It's not an unhealthy self-hatred or a lack of boundaries.
Right, it's not a degradation of the human spirit.
Rather, it is the ultimate rest for the soul. It is simply the courage to put that heavy theatrical backdrop down.
The profound relief of no longer having to pretend.
Exactly. The text uses striking paradoxes to describe this state of humility, referring to it as joyful sorrow or a sad and shining humility.
Joyful sorrow. At first glance, that sounds completely contradictory.
It does, but the joy comes precisely from the sorrow. When we finally weep over our sins and acknowledge our deep flaws, we are stepping off the stage.
We're admitting our brokenness to God, and in doing so, the exhausting performance just ends.
The tears bring profound, liberating comfort because they wash away the heavy mask.
Yet, the text issues a very serious ancient warning here. We cannot undertake this process of unmasking alone.
No, we cannot. We can't heal our ego using the exact same confused, tangled mental frameworks that made us sick in the first place.
Because our pride is incredibly deceptive. It can even turn our attempts at humility into a new, subtle form of vanity.
Right, we begin to pride ourselves on how humble we are.
We fall right back into the labyrinth. This is why the Philokalia insists that we must humbly submit to a spiritual guide.
It functions like a necessary psychological mirror. Because we have permanent blind spots to our own ego, we need the objective, loving discernment of a spiritual father or mother to show us what we can't see.
The text solemnly warns, "He who tries to fight the spirits alone is killed by them,"
We desperately need an outside observer to guide us out of the trap of self-reliance.
which requires surrendering our self-will. That might be the deepest challenge for a modern person taught that independence is the highest virtue.
It is a massive hurdle.
But this raises a vital question about application for me. It is one thing to feel a sense of peaceful humility when we are alone in prayer, or when we are willingly submitting to a trusted guide. How does this profound smerenia function in the abrasive friction of daily life, like when we are under direct attack by someone else?
To map how this humility operates under fire, Abba Dorotheus provides a deeply diagnostic story. It moves us from internal, quiet reflection directly into our painful interactions with others.
Okay, I'd love to hear it.
He tells the story of 3 monks who are subjected to the exact same harsh, completely unjustified insult by another brother.
Let's trace their internal reactions, because they serve as an ultimate test for our own souls.
So the first monk hears the terrible insult and stays perfectly quiet. He doesn't retaliate verbally, but internally his mind is racing.
What's he thinking?
He thinks to himself, I will not stoop to your level. I am far better than you, and you are acting like a fool.
So he has maintained an outward appearance of calm discipline, but his ego is completely unscathed. It's firmly in charge.
Exactly. He hasn't actually bypassed the anger. He has simply replaced outward aggression with internal superiority and disdain.
Which is a very common trap.
And that internal superiority is exactly what Abba Dorotheus warns against. Then we observe the second monk.
How does he react?
He hears the same insult, and he struggles violently within himself. He feels the intense heat of anger rising in his chest, and he has to fight with all his might to suppress it.
To bite his tongue and force himself to stay quiet?
Yes. He manages not to sin in his speech, but his soul is in a state of violent turmoil.
So the second monk hasn't solved the spiritual sickness either. He has just internalized the violence. He's enduring, but he has not found peace.
Right.
I'm assuming the third monk finds a way to process this completely differently.
He does. The third monk hears the identical, harsh, unjustified insult, but his reaction defies human logic.
What does he do?
He immediately bursts into tears of pure, sincere compassion for the person who is insulting him. He isn't thinking of his own injured pride for a single second. He is grieving over the spiritual blindness, the inner torment, and the immense pain that the offender must be experiencing to speak such cruel words.
He sees the insult as a tragic symptom of his brother's spiritual sickness.
And his heart just breaks for him. Abba Dorotheus tells us that only this third monk has reached true, unshakable inner peace.
It is a breathtaking level of spiritual maturity. To be so entirely emptied of self-importance, to have put down the theatrical backdrop so completely that an insult doesn't even strike a bruised ego.
It strikes a deep well of love and pity for the one lashing out.
How does a regular person even begin to cultivate that mindset?
Well, Abba Dorotheus introduces a revolutionary teaching to help us get there. It's known as the analogy of the vessels.
The vessels.
Yes, and it's designed to completely reframe how we view every conflict in our daily lives. He explains that when someone provokes us, let's say a passive-aggressive colleague at work or a family member who knows exactly how to hurt our feelings, that person is not creating our anger.
We aren't creating it.
No, they are merely bumping into our internal vessel.
This is a massive paradigm shift. In our modern culture, we almost exclusively believe that the other person is the manufacturer of our anger. We say, "You made me mad," firmly placing the blame on their actions.
But the wisdom of the desert tells us that this is an illusion. The person bumping into us merely causes the vessel to spill. Whatever spills out, whether it's frustration, rage, bitterness, or anxiety, was already stored up inside of us long before they walked into the room.
So if a vessel is filled with pure water and you bump it harshly, only pure water spills out.
Exactly. And if it's filled with muddy water, mud spills out. Therefore, the person offending us is not our enemy. In a profound spiritual sense, they are an involuntary surgeon.
Involuntary surgeon. Let's really consider the weight of that phrase. They are holding a scalpel to our soul, pointing exactly to the hidden spiritual inflammation.
Pointing to the stored-up pride and unhealed anger that we desperately need to address. They reveal to us our own spiritual sickness, which we had carefully hidden behind our daily masks.
Because without their provocation, we might have continued to comfortably believe we were perfectly peaceful, patient, and humble.
By bumping our vessel, they do us the immense service of showing us what is actually inside of it.
Giving us the necessary opportunity to repent and ask God to cleanse the mud. The radical emotional responsibility of this teaching is just staggering.
It is.
It completely strips away our ability to play the helpless victim. We're so quick to blame our environment, our stressful circumstances, or the toxic behavior of others for our lack of peace.
But this ancient wisdom gently removes that excuse. And in doing so, it offers profound liberation.
Because we cannot control how others act. The city will always be chaotic.
Right. But if our peace depends solely on the purification of our own vessel by the grace of God, then true peace is always within our reach,
regardless of the behavior of those around us.
That realization is a monumental step on the journey. Understanding that every failure, every insult, and every spilled vessel is not a reason for despair, but a necessary opportunity for healing.
And that brings us toward the very top of the spiritual ladder described by St. John Climacus.
It does.
If realizing our own brokenness and accepting the scalpel of the involuntary surgeon is what gets us up the ladder, it makes me wonder what the destination actually looks like. Does it culminate in a state of perpetual self-reflection, or do we find something else at the summit?
The top of the ladder rests at the very opening of heaven. And that final highest step is simply love.
Love.
Yes. After outlining all the grueling struggles against the passions, all the tears of joyful sorrow, and the profound depths of humility, the text arrives at love.
How does Climacus describe it?
He displays immense intellectual and spiritual humility here. He admits that trying to define this divine love with mere human words is an impossible task. He says it's like a blind man standing on the shore trying to count the grains of sand at the bottom of the ocean.
Wow.
Love is God himself, and it is infinite. We return right back to where we started, the infinite, filling the infinite void.
The journey through this text, though it demands rigorous self-examination and a painful confrontation with our own ego, ultimately delivers a message of profound, radiant hope.
It really does.
The path to healing the soul is not a path of unbroken perfection. Every time we fall, every time our vessel is bumped and spills muddy water, it's not a final defeat.
It is simply the raw, necessary material for us to humbly stand back up.
Through the grace of God, we slowly transform our failures, our recognized weaknesses, into the very foundation of an unshakable inner peace.
The mud is cleared away, drop by drop, replacing our anxiety with the quiet, infinite presence of God.
The lifelong, gentle process of softening the heart, lowering the mask, and allowing the involuntary surgeons in our lives to help us see our desperate need for the great physician.
Beautifully said.
As we bring this deep dive to a close, I want to leave you, our listener, with a final, quiet contemplation. We've spent this time discussing how to react when someone bumps into our vessel. But consider the inverse. Think about the people you interact with every single day. Your family, your coworkers, the strangers on the street.
They're all carrying their own incredibly heavy, fragile vessels.
Many of them filled with the muddy water of hidden pain, anxiety, and fear. What if you recognize that your words and your actions are constantly bumping into them?
We are all involuntary surgeons in each other's lives.
We are, holding scalpels to one another's souls. How should that realization change the gentleness, the patience, and the profound care with which you walk through the world today? Thanks for watching until the end. If you liked this video, don't forget to hit the like button and share it. It helps us out a lot. If you're new here, hit subscribe and the notification bell to be notified when we post next time. See you soon.